Any thoughts as to sort of best practices around segments? Should you segment differently based on responsiveness to or engagement levels of
Oh,
email
ab-
and those kinds of things?
absolutely. The engagement segmentation is email marketing 101. You know, we want to send more mail to our engaged users and less mail to our unengaged users. And doing that will keep you safe. And that's just a very basic segment. And that can be, people that have opened in the last X period of days. You know, you want users that joined yesterday and were sent this particular template and opened, right? I mean, we can, this segmenting I'm getting so many requests for different segmenting features. It's crazy.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm super excited to have John Cross with me today to discuss email marketing best practices. So, John, let's start with the catalyst for you deciding to start all-in-one email. You've been in email marketing long before you started that company, so there must have been sort of a tipping point where you said, "All right, I got to do this."
Yeah, that's correct, Kevin. So, I've been in the email marketing space since the early 2000s. I've had several email marketing companies since then. My most recent email marketing company, we basically just outgrew our platform. And we were looking for something that we could find in the marketplace, something off the shelf. We tried a number of platforms and just weren't satisfied with what was available. So 2 years ago, we decided to bite the bullet and build this platform ourselves internally and use it for our efforts. And we did that, and we started letting friends use the platform, and it became kind of its own thing where we decided to take this all-in-one email platform that we had built for ourselves and turn it into a SaaS platform and take it to market. So last March of 2023 is when we officially launched it to the market, and we've been growing ever since. I left that company actually a few months ago to focus 100% on the all-in-one email platform. So I'm no longer a mailer. I'm more of a owner of an email service provider. So I'm on the other side now for the first time, and it's very different, but I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Cool. Well, this year, I think there were a bunch of changes that have significant impact on deliverability. With regards to all the settings of DMARC and all the other sort of validation settings around. Is this IP address allowed to send this mail, or is this a validated sender? Those kinds of things. Do you feel like a lot of email marketers have sort of been caught unawares, despite the fact that there was a lot of warning that some of the inbound, email inbox platforms gave, warning, like, by the way, we're going to tighten deliverability.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say most good email marketers were fully aware and are fully aware. There was a little bit of worry, and I wouldn't say panic, but concern about what do these new changes at Gmail and Yahoo mean for our delivery. You know, but we any mailer that's doing it right, which is was what I'm doing. I'm not really that concerned, Kevin. You know, I mean, the metric that I'm most concerned about is that spam complaint rate. We do all the authentication, DKIM, DMARC, SPF. I mean, that's just email marketing 101. If you're not doing that, you don't know what you're doing, or you're just trying to game the system and and be a spammer. But doing it right, using data hygiene, validate your data before you even attempt to send it is key. And I think if you're doing it right, you're not going to have problems. And by the way, we have not heard of any issues in the industry about, hey, I'm getting blocked. I can't, I mean, I think it's going to be a slow rollout, for Gmail. They've already pushed back some of their requirements to June. So I think they're seeing that this isn't going to be as bad as people thought it was, the end of the world, at the beginning of the year.
Yep, yep. You mentioned hygiene, and one thing I've noticed in the email marketing space is there's been differences of opinion on hygiene, even back in the days when you could see valid open data, right? And now with the way that some of the inboxes are proxying things, you can't really even see that anymore. So it used to be that people would say, "Oh, I haven't had an open from this group of people or these, 3,000 addresses. I'm just going to go ahead and drop them from my list." Right? But then when you couldn't see that anymore,
Yeah.
you were forced to decide, well, that doesn't make sense anymore as a hygiene best practice. What should my new hygiene best practice be? Should it be, click engagement? Like if they haven't if clicked in X amount of time or X amount of sends, maybe I should purge them, right? So are there sort of hard and fast rules, or is it really quite different depending on whether it's sort of an email newsletter or an e-commerce offers system or whatever? Are there any sort of guidelines as far as hygiene goes?
Well, obviously, you want to clean your data before you even attempt to mail. And then you want to check, it depends on the mailer and the company. We want to weed out the non-openers, the non-clickers after about 30 days. Some people go longer. I'm more on the cautious, the conservative side. If they're not opening, and I just don't want them to complain, right? If they don't want my service, all right, there's plenty of people that do. Um, and regarding the ISPs that are, using their cache and with the pixels and it's mainly with Apple. And as long as the users are clicking, in that group, and I do segment all of my mailing by domain group. So I've got the Yahoo family, I call it. I've got the Gmail, I got the Microsoft family, I've got the Apple, and then I've got cable. And so I send to those five primary domain groups only. And I stopped sending mail to what they call GI, General Internet, many, many years ago, just out of caution again, because those are the addresses that typically are problematic. They can give you the spam traps of the world. And so, those five domain groups that I mentioned is about 98% of the internet anyway. So, you're losing a few percentage by not mailing to the GI customers. I think it's a safety thing for me because I just don't want to have to deal with issues on complaints.
Right, right. Um, what about B2B marketers, right? B2B marketers probably for the most part will be mailing to corporate domains, and
Right.
a lot of those corporate domains might have like a Barracuda or some more sophisticated filtering. Are there different best practices when it's corporate domains versus sort of the Gmails, Hotmails, Yahoo Mails of the world?
Yeah. I mean, so I've worked with some mailers that do the cold B2B email marketing. They're basically renting or buying a list. It usually doesn't work because it's pretty risky. And a lot of those corporate domains do get caught up, like you said, in those Barracuda, those software platforms. Many of them are also what they call a catch-all domain, where or a catch-all email address where like anything at that domain goes to this user, and that can be problematic too in terms of your complaints and getting blocked. So I don't have a lot of users in B2B space. It's something that I just haven't been exposed to very much, but I have worked with a few, and it's a very cautious. Getting getting email addresses like from a trade show or collecting business cards or scanning somebody's badge at a show, for me is the best way uh, to get your B2B customer. Because I do that particular method. I'm at trade shows, I'm scanning badges, following up with people. I know who they are basically. So I've got that, at least I've got that familiarity to it where, hey, we met at this conference. Let's, continue our conversation. It just does so much better than just cold B2B. And the thing also about B2B is you gotta have a compelling offer. Like why are they opening this? Why, what is it that you have that, how can you message that content to get them to open or click or pick up the phone and call?
Right, right. So yeah, I think that's probably a best practices in general, right? Is you want to have a compelling offer in your subject line. You want to have a compelling offer in the email itself. Um, what do you think about these platforms that allow you to sort of run your subject line and potentially your email through either to score it on readability or score it on spam score? Like, will it is more likely to get filtered, less likely to get filtered, things like that? Are there any favorites there or best practices you find
Yeah,
with regards to, before you go ahead and blast it out to either a segment of your list or to the whole list that you sort of, increase your odds?
yeah. What one service provider called Email on Acid. I'm sure you've heard of them. They are very good, and I like to uh, put my templates through there and get their score. And it'll also help you find any errors in the HTML and those kind of things. It can be very helpful to help with delivery and dealing with key words that are spammy. It also can help you with as well. And there's another uh, tool out there called I think it's just called subjectline.com, and Jay, I believe Jay Schwedelson runs that, but it's another good tool to help you with your subject lines. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's a good idea. The more, and these services aren't expensive, and it's worth spending a little bit of money on some of these third party services to get you the best delivery you can.
Well, one thing that's I think interesting is, they've been saying for probably 7 or 8 years minimum that email is dead, right? And it's all about SMS, other forms of push marketing, and put those other formats of push marketing, whether it's browser-based push or SMS or whatever. Those are all great, but email has remained really foundational for a lot of marketers and nonprofits too. I mean, nonprofits really rely on the ability to communicate, and publishers as well. And I think what's fascinating is now with the deprecation of the third-party cookie in the final browser, right, which is Chrome, but the biggest, right, you have publishers and other entities realizing, like, wait a minute, I need a first-party relationship, right? I need first-party data. I need a permission relationship. I'm losing my other reasons. Like, I really need to know who this person is, maybe for identity purposes, or I need it because I need to communicate with them. And I think there's been almost a renaissance in email as a result of the, cookie apocalypse. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I totally would. And there was, people shouting, email is dead, right? And for years. And it's like,
Right.
look at the ROI and compare it to SMS. Compare it to your other digital marketing efforts. There's no ROI better that I'm aware of. And so, yeah, no, I don't think it's dead at all. And however, using email in conjunction with SMS, doing so my platform is looking to integrate SMS into our automated workflows. So we're looking to have logic to where if the user did not open it, in X period of time, then we can, have the logic, okay, send SMS and remind them, hey, did you see our email from yesterday about this special offer? I think that's the way that you can use, SMS, in parallel with email and be just as effective or more.
Yeah, what's fascinating is that there's almost like a different bar for SMS, but it also tends to be depending on the audience, right? So my bar for accepting something in my SMS inbox is a lot higher. My teenagers, yeah, their bar is a little bit lower, right? But it's still different than email, right? Like email has a pretty low bar. Like if it's not that relevant and somebody sends me an email, I'll usually forgive them, right? But if they send me an SMS and it's not relevant, I'm pissed, right? So, and maybe my kids are as well, right? So I feel like as marketers, they really need to think through, like, does this SMS rise to the level of importance and value to the recipient where they'll be delighted that they're receiving it, right? And I don't feel
Yeah.
like all SMS marketers are putting it through that process.
And I agree. And I treat my text pretty, I'm pretty protective of who gets through. And I can with my inbox on my phone, I can just flip through, blah blah blah. But this thing, this SMS message I just got, pops up on my notification like, "Who are you?" It's typically some candidate. I'm getting a lot of political stuff right now, and I'm getting report junk. Delete report junk. And if I don't know them, I just report junk.
Right. I seem to recall reading somewhere that when they wrote the Canned Spam Act and they put all the other regulations in place, that the politicians exempted themselves from all the
They
rules.
did. They did. Imagine that.
So they're the only ones who are allowed to spam with impunity.
Yeah, and
Um,
I tell you what, political email marketing is big money. I mean, it's huge, and especially right now. I mean, what's going on,
mhm.
whatever aisle you lean on, it's huge. And if you get on a list, it's virtually impossible to get on because
Yeah,
every other candidate in that party gets your data, and it goes forever. So it's kind of a sad thing. You can, write yourself out of legislation, give yourself vote to give yourself a raise.
so beyond email and then obviously SMS, the two other areas of push notification don't necessarily apply to every marketer, but you've got browser-based push, right?
Right.
And then you've
Yep.
got some companies have apps, right? And then within the apps, they have the identity of the individual and they can have them in their database, their CRM or whatever, and they can sort of push them app notifications. Any thoughts as to sort of how those things might end up working in tandem together? Again, you were thinking through a choreography where if I send them an email and they don't respond, and I really think that it's a high value relationship, I might move to SMS. If you also had an app based push
Mhm.
notification opportunity, or you had a browser push notification opportunity with those marketers, would you slot them in between before you hit the SMS, or would you sort of do email, SMS, browser push, assuming you had all four, right? Which is
Right.
really rare, right? For you to have
Yeah.
all four touch points. But do you sort of have a choreography in mind that you think would work really well for people?
I think having the app is at the top of the tree. It's at the top of the tier, so to speak. I think those people have purposely downloaded my content, my app. They want to hear from me, and I think that's the first place where I would want to communicate with them with the notifications. And then if they don't, I would probably do SMS next, then email third, and then the push on the browser last. I kind of find that one real late.
Right. Have you seen more implementation of sort of a hyper personalization potentially driven off of AI? Right. I mean,
Uh,
I sort of think back 10, 12 years ago, you basically had your list. Everybody got the same thing, right? And then of course they started like, well, at least I want to greet the person by name. I'm going to do a merge and like
yeah,
insert the, name thing here. And then it started getting more sophisticated. Like, okay, I've got four different segments to my audience, and I'm going to get four different emails to the different segments, and they'll also be personalized by name. You have the ability coming down the pike, if it's not here yet, to really hyper personalize, right? To the point where you're not doing batch and blast even at a segmented level. You're potentially curating a specific email to a specific individual at scale. Do you
Yeah.
feel like that's going to be something that really takes shape this year, or you think it maybe is next year before you can do that level of hyper
I
personalization?
think some of that is being done right now. With all the data append that's available out there, and what you can add to that profile of that consumer, AI is just going to eat it up. And that's just one area of AI in email. I mean, there's a whole other area in AI that's doing content. That's doing the timing. The cadence. When and how often do we mail these people? And
Right.
so AI is learning, and they said, okay, well, we need to send this to this person. Between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. on weeknights, because based on their past behavior. I think that's where it's going as well.
Do you feel like the industry is sort of ready for that level of hyper personalization, or do you
Oh,
feel like it's
yeah.
still evolving?
Well, I mean, I think it's still evolving. I mean, I think there's like such a desire,
Right.
from these marketers that want something new and they want this AI, and there's a lot of people promising. Excuse me, I'm not sure if it's ready yet because I've not seen it personally. Um, but I have talked to several companies that have it. I'm looking at doing it more in the automation flow in terms of the timing and the cadence and which template, what content do we need to send at what time. And
Right.
that's I'm going with AI for at all the money.
So if we sort of think about three broad categories of heavy emailers, you've got publishers slash broadcasters, you've got brands who sometimes are brands that act like publishers, right? Where they're heavy
Right?
content creators. Some of them are just purely based on sales, right? Which is less of a content-based brand. And then you've got nonprofits. Do you feel like there are different best practices depending on whether you're sort of a publisher, broadcaster, a brand, or a nonprofit doing your email?
Yeah, yeah. I think with brands, you got to be careful how much you mail because you can easily anger customers, in sending too much. Relevancy is so important with brands and e-commerce. Whereas the big publishers, I mean, that's kind of their game. I mean, volume is their game, and if they work it right, they can keep the complaint rates low, keep the delivery rate high. Um, they're not as worried about it as brands would be, and even nonprofits too. They're still a brand, and it's like you're asking for money, right?
Yeah, for sure. Um, so one of the things that I'm always fascinated about is like when a person decides to change ESPs, right? Which is a pretty big decision, right? They have to decide the ESP I've got doesn't meet my needs anymore. Um, but you're looking to migrate your list over, either whether it's a batch and blast single list or whether you've actually got a sophisticated level of segmentation. There's got to be best practices to doing that, because you know there might be like a hiccup in deliverability as a
Mm-hmm.
result if you don't do it right.
That's right. And on thinking about the publisher group, I mean, they typically have more than one ESP going at a time anyway. They don't want to put all their eggs in one basket because if they do get blocked or something catastrophic does happen to them, they're dead in the water. So there's typically multiple ESPs going, and they do that um, because different ESPs can perform differently at the different ISPs. So we've got uh, customers that use one particular ESP just to mail Gmail, and then they use Yahoo or another ESP for Yahoo and Microsoft and so forth. Brands, it's got to be a slow process to change over because they typically are using one e-commerce or big brands, nonprofits. Um, and it needs to be a very thought out and meticulous process working with your new ESP and getting everything set up, doing testing, warming up, and then slowly, moving things over to your new ESP. It should not be a flip the switch and one goes off and one goes on. It needs to be like a hybrid for months. to get the new one up and running.
Right, right. Um, when you think about sort of segmentation of lists, right? If we're moving towards a sort of segment of one, right? That's sort of the nirvana, right? In the meantime, you've got different segments, which could be based on, a lot of information that you have on me, either that you as a marketer, right,
Right.
collected or got appended on from third parties like Experian, which probably knows what color underwear I have on, even if I don't know, because it's in their database, right?
Right.
So, any thoughts as to sort of best practices around segments? Should you segment differently based on responsiveness to or engagement levels of
Oh,
email
ab-
and those kinds of things?
absolutely. The engagement segmentation is email marketing 101. We want to send more mail to our engaged users and less mail to our unengaged users. And doing that will keep you safe. And that's just a very basic segment. And that can be, people that have opened in the last X period of days, that you can, and we're very sophisticated in our segmenting where you can get, you know, you want users that joined yesterday and were sent this particular template and opened, right? I mean, we can, this segmenting I'm getting so many requests for different segmenting features. It's crazy. So it's like, they want to be able to segment based on all the fields that they have on their user, which is a lot, like you said, and they could buy a lot. They could, all these append data they can have. So they want to be able to say, I want to send people in California that are 18 to 35 years old, male, and are Democrats or whatever, And that's where the most of my requests I get is about segmenting.
Interesting. Going back to a comment you made about publishers in particular using more than one ESP,
Mhm.
when you're using more than one ESP, obviously you have to centralize the unsubscribe process. So is that something that some technologies do better than others? Because I would imagine that if you don't do it that way, you need to sort of API yourself into all the data.
And that's exactly right. So in the old days, it was a manual, download my unsubscribes over here, download them over there, bring them all together, and then re-upload everything. Right now, it's all API. So our platform, we can push, uh, our customers can push global unsubscribers to our platform. They can pull unsubscribers from our platform because, like I said, many of our customers have multiple ESPs, they're using different platforms or whatever. It's critical. You want that to be automated. You don't want to have somebody have to manually go in there, once a day or once a week or whatever, and do that. It's just you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, cool. So, any other best practices that you feel are missed by email marketers where, if you get brought into a conversation and you're like, okay, here I see this one again, like they screwed this up, right? And you see it more often than not.
Well, uh, I believe that triggered mail and autoresponder mail is king. I personally don't do bulk mail, big newsletters. I, have an API with live data coming in, and when they sign up on whether it's my site or a partner site, it gets API'd into the platform. They get triggered a welcome message, and based on their behavior, they're going to keep getting mail if they keep opening and clicking. If they don't, then they just fall out of the automation.
Right.
So for me, it's all about the automation and the triggered mail. I think that's key.
And are there, when first building that automation, are there any sort of nice templates that show the choreography, like the best case choreography as a publisher, best case choreography as an e-commerce brand, best case or a choreography as a nonprofit?
Yeah. So brands and like affiliate publishers are very different in the way they make. The brand, they want the order confirmation, the shipping confirmation, and then it becomes more you're championing your brand. You want them to repurchase, obviously, but you want to give them some education about your product. Very different from what the publishers would do. They're just kind of blasting out different promotional products. This person clicked on a solar offer. Well, that tells me that they're probably a homeowner, right? So then I can put them down a whole other path of offers that have to do with what homeowners would like. So it's a very different method and strategies between those different categories.
Right. So this is actually more of a question that relates to some stuff I'm working on under Giving Forward. There was a time, maybe 10, 12 years ago where co-registration was pretty popular. And then it sort of
Yeah.
fell out of favor, but I've noticed it sort of come back a little bit as long as the level of notification is high enough. Now, it's not something that I see anybody doing overseas, but certainly within the United States, it seems like there might still be an opportunity for co-registration if a person has an interest in something else, and the person managing the co-reg page can be pretty confident that that extra checkbox for a brand would delight the registrant. And any thoughts on whether that's still alive and kicking, or is it dead?
Well, it's not dead, but it is dying, I would say. I think a lot of people got in trouble, not being, not having the full disclosures, and not really having true opt-in, and there were, some big lawsuits, so yeah, people got scared, afraid, but I do know some mailers that are still using co-reg and doing very well. And as long as it's, authentic, in terms of the user knows what they're checking and what they're getting, yeah, it's going to be around. People are making money on it. So
Right, right.
I think it's still going to be live as long as that happens.
Great. So what has you excited about 2024 from the email marketing and push marketing perspective?
Um, I'm actually pretty excited about AI. We're spending a lot of time uh, getting it into the platform. We're doing a lot of research. I think it's going to just be huge. It's the newest thing.
Right, right. Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing how your platform evolves with the power of AI layered on top of it. Thanks so much, Sean, for joining me for the podcast.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you for inviting me.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.